Hello friend. Today I am discussing little bit about first cranial nerve, that is olfactory nerve, and this is most important cranial nerve, first cranial nerve, that is responsible for only sensory function. This will not perform any motor function, and this is only nerve which is not direct extension of the brains, that is, this is not arising from the any part of brains. This is not connected with the brain, as we know that there are altogether 12 pairs of nerves, and they most of them are arising from the brain stem, like third cranial nerve, fourth cranial nerve, they are arising from midbrain, and then fifth, sixth, seventh, they are arising from pons, and later on they are arising from medulla. Like that, this is the cranial nerve which is not the direct extension of brain stem or brain matter, but it is thought that the part of olfactory nerve beyond olfactory bulb, and olfactory bulb along with olfactory tract and olfactory stria, they are not the part of peripheral nerve system, rather they are extension of telencephalon of the brain, and they are also covered with the dura mater or the matter of the brain, like the brain is covered with the meninges, so these parts are also covered in a layer of the dura mater, so they are regarded as direct extension of the telencephalon. So coming with introduction of the olfactive nerve, the most important sensory function of this nerve is olfaction, and from where olfaction is carried. So cranial nerve first, that is olfactive cranial nerve, is responsible for transmission of olfaction from the nasal cavity or the nasopharynx to the cortical systems. And there are altogether 2 or 3 cortical systems which are responsible for analyzing the olfactions, identifying the olfaction, and regarding the knowledge of memory, previous memory of the olfaction. And they are primary cortex, secondary cortex, and there are lots of parts within the primary cortex and the secondary cortex. So coming to the perception of a smell, usually nasal mucosa and the epithelium in nasal mucosa, they are responsible for perception of a smell. So a smell is perceived by posterior most and the posterior superior nasal mucosa. Actually, nasal cavity is divided into different chambers by the turbinates, and there are 3 turbinates: inferior, middle, and superior turbinates. Actually, nasal mucosa above superior turbinate, located in the posterior superior most part of the nasal cavity above superior turbinate on the either side of the nasal septum, that is posterior and superior part of nasal septum, that is containing the epithelium, and that is called as olfactory epithelium. And that olfactory epithelium, which is neuroepithelium, is responsible for the perception of the olfaction. So olfactory mucosa is containing lots of cells. There are supportive cells, there are basal cells, as we see here. There are supportive cells, there are basal cells, and basal cells are responsible for the regeneration of the olfactory epithelium, which is destroyed time to time, and supporting cells are supporting the neuroepithelium, that is called as olfactory epithelium. So olfactory epithelium is a bipolar cells, and this olfactory epithelium, that is neuroepithelium, have cilia like process. So what is difference between cilia of the other olfactive cells and the olfactive neuroepithelium is that cilia of olfactive epithelium is immotile, but cilia of that of other olfactive cells, those are tall columnar cells, are motile. So difference between cilia of olfactive epithelium and other epithelium of the olfactive mucosa is that cilia is immotile in case of olfactive epithelium, that is neuroepithelium. So this neuroepithelium, that is olfactive epithelium, is a bipolar cells, have two type of process. One is the peripheral process, other is the central process. So peripheral process are the dendrites of the bipolar cells, and those are attached with the olfactive mucosa, and olfactive mucosa is responsible for perception of odorants. So when odorants of a particular odors or particular olfactions, they attach with the olfactive mucosa. So these cilia, immotile cilia, they perceives that odorant or odor, and they transmit to the centers, that is the olfactive bulb, olfactive tract, and then medial and lateral olfactory stria to the primary olfactive cortex and the secondary olfactive cortex and the other area of the cortical system and subcortical systems. So what happened actually, this neuroepithelium in the bundles of 20 axons, that is central process of olfactive epithelium is called axon. So 12 to 20 olfactive epithelium, that is axon of olfactive epithelium, they make a bundles, and they enters the cortex, they enters the brain through the perforated opening in the cribriform palate of the skull, that is cribriform palate, located above the nasal cavity, containing lots of pores through which this epithelium, which makes the bundle of the 20 axon, they pass through the perforated opening into the olfactive bulb. So they pass through the perforated opening in the cribriform palate, and inside the olfactive bulbs, the axons of the olfactive epithelium, here you can see axons of the olfactive, that is neuroepithelium, they are passing through the cribriform palate, and they enter the olfactive bulbs, where they ends on the dendrites of the mitral cells located inside the olfactive bulbs. So dendrites of the mitral cells inside the olfactive bulbs and the axons of the neuroepithelium, that is olfactive epithelium, they combines, they forms a bundles and the bunches, that is called as glomerulus. So these glomerulus and the mitral cells, they have also lateral connection with the other type of cells, that is accessory cells, and they are other glandular cells, they are connected with other glandular cells, and the cells, they are responsible for inhibition of the side, that is other odors. So actually these inhibitory processes are believed to heighten the olfactive contracts, which adds in the more accurate perception of smells. So they are also connected with the granule-like cell or periglomerular cells. They inhibit the activity of mitral cells. Actually, what do you know? Each and every olfactive epithelium, they are responsible for single orders. Each and every olfactive epithelium, they have single odorant receptors. They are containing receptor for single odorants. But when they transmit and they go to combine to the mitral cell receiving every type of odorant stimulus, they can transmit each and every odorant to the cortex. but olfactory epithelium actually receives only single variety of odorant, because this epithelium have only single variety of receptors for the single odorant. So in this way, olfactive epithelium, they enters the cribriform palate and the olfactive bulbs. They combine with the mitral cells, and the axons of the mitral cells, they forms a bundle which is called as olfactive tract. And the olfactive tract, here you can see, is located along with olfactive bulb and olfactive stria over the orbital cortex, that is orbitofrontal cortex. So orbitofrontal cortex is divided into lateral orbital gyrus, posterior orbital gyrus, anterior orbital gyrus, and medial orbital gyrus by different sulcus. So actually medial orbital gyrus is containing the olfactive sulcus on the orbitofrontal cortex. Here you can see. And this orbitofrontal cortex is containing medial orbital gyrus, which is containing olfactive sulcus. Inside the olfactive sulcus, olfactive bulbs, olfactive tract, and olfactive strias are located. So sensation from the epithelium, they enters the glomerulus inside the olfactive bulb, and they go within the olfactive tract to in the olfactive cortex through the lateral olfactive stria, through the medial olfactive stria, and the intermediate olfactive stria. So actually lateral olfactive stria, they ends in the primary olfactive cortex. So primary olfactive cortex, here you can see, is containing uncus gyrus, anterior hippocampal gyrus, piriform cortex, and amygdaloid nucleus. These are the part of the anterior or primary olfactive cortex, where medial olfactive stria, they ends in the para-olfactive area, subcallosal gyrus, and inferior part of cingulate gyrus. Some of the fiber, they end in this part, that is para-olfactive area, subcallosal gyrus, and inferior part of cingulate gyrus. But most of the fiber of the medial olfactive stria, they cross to the opposite side and they end in the opposite cortex, so that olfactive mucosa has dual supply. So olfactive nerve have dual supply, bilateral supply. So through the medial olfactive stria, some of the fiber, they cross to the opposite cortex and they transmit the odors to the opposite side of the cortex. Actually, primary olfactive cortex is responsible for perception of the odor, and this is responsible for identification of odors. But secondary olfactive cortex, like entorhinal area number 28, here this is shown, entorhinal cortex, this is responsible for past memory of an olfaction and odors, which you remember that this is the odor of flowers and this is odors of this flower. So this is past memory, and this is past memory is given by entorhinal cortex. So in this summary, olfactive epithelium, they carry odors from the olfactive mucosa, enters the brain through the cribriform palate, attached to the mitral cell in the olfactive bulb, and the axons of olfactive bulb, they carry to the cerebral cortex through the medial olfactive stria, lateral olfactive stria, and intermediate olfactive stria. Medial olfactive stria, they crosses to the opposite side. Lateral olfactive stria, they ends in the primary olfactive cortex and the secondary olfactive cortex. So this is what we have to know. This is the pathway of the olfactive system. So olfactive system has a small pathway where the this olfactive processing occurs. But one thing you have to know that inside the olfactive bulbs there are granule cells and perigranular cells which is attached to the glomerulus and the mitral cells, and they inhibit and sharpens the olfactions process. So first order neurons of the olfactive pathway, that is starting from epithelium, olfactive epithelium, and ends to the glomerulus. Here they ends to the glomerulus. And the second order neuron started in olfactive bulbs, where the second neurons of the olfactive pathway, that is matrals and tuft cells, are located, is considered an extension of telencephalon, we know. An axon of these second order neurons passes centrally as the olfactive tract. Here passes centrally to the olfactive tracts. And the piriform area number 28, is considered the primary olfactive cortex, which contains the third order neuron. And third order neuron started here from the piriform cortex, hippocampal cortex, entorhinal cortex. These are the part of the primary olfactive area, primary olfactive cortex, and this is containing the third order neuron. And fourth order neurons are also there. They are connected to the different subcortical structure, cranial nerve nuclei, and different nucleus which are responsible for further processing of the olfactions. Those are fourth order neurons. This is the only system or olfactive nerve which is not directed connected with the hypothalamus. This is connected with hypothalamus but not directly connected with the hypothalamus. So what happened actually? When odorant they attached to the olfactive mucosa, when they attach to the olfactive mucosa, there are a process which occurs. You can see here a small diagram which is showing that chemical odorant attaching to the olfactive mucosa. When they attach to olfactive mucosa, there is a sequence of biochemical event which occurs, leads to production of action potential inside the olfactive epithelium related to a particle odorant which is transmitted to the olfactive cortex. So what these odorant they do, they start a biochemical process by activation of G protein. When odorant attached to the olfactive mucosa, G protein of the olfactive mucosa, they get activated. When G protein they get activated, they activate adenyl cyclase enzymes present in the olfactive mucosa. This adenyl cyclase, they produce cyclic AMP from the ATP, and this cyclic AMP they accumulate in the olfactive epithelium and they opens the sodium and calcium channel. So 2 sodium ion and calcium ion on the stimulation, by the stimulation of cyclic AMP, they enters the olfactive epithelium and raises the action potential and produce the action potential and the response. So odorant attached to the olfactive mucosa activate G protein, which in turn activate adenyl cyclase, which cause production of cyclic AMP, and the cyclic AMP opens the sodium and calcium channel, and hence sodium and calcium influx inside the cells and produce action potential, and this generate a response and sensation that is called olfactive sensation, and this olfactive sensation they transmit through the olfactive epithelium and then through the bulb tract and lateral striatum to the orbitofrontal cortex. So this is the biochemical process which is occurring with the particular type of the olfactive olfactions and production of action potential responsible for transmission of the olfaction to the central, that is cortical structure, that is primary olfactive cortex, secondary olfactive cortex, and other accessory olfactive area of the cortex. So actually primary olfactive cortex is considered the primary olfactive cortex, that is piriform cortex, and the area most closely associated with the identifying odors. So actually primary olfactive cortex, piriform cortex, hippocampus gyrus, they are responsible for identification of the odor. If we are talking about medial amygdala, is involved in social functions such as mating and the recognition of animal of the same species, and this function is not present in human being, and this gradually with the evolution of the brain, this function of the amygdala this disappear in the human being, but this is still persisting in the animal, and they use this medial amygdala for recognizing the other animal and the smells of the other animal, like in tiger and other type of lions and animals. This function of the olfaction is still persisting. And other area is entorhinal cortex, and this is associated with memory, to pair odors with the proper memory. So the exact function of these higher area are a matter of scientific research and debate still, but olfaction is only sensation not directly processed in the thalamus, we have to know. So however, indirectly the olfactory fiber from the olfactive cortex pass to the neocortex, passes by the thalamus, terminating in the basal forebrain. And what we have to know that other than primary olfactive cortex and the secondary olfactive cortex, there are area, that is hypothalamic nuclei, reticular formation, salivatory nuclei, dorsal vagal nucleus. Those are also the structure which are responsible for the processing of the olfaction. Here you can see dorsal vagal nucleus, habeneural nucleus, interpeduncular nucleus, trigeminal nucleus, reticular formation, and salivatory nucleus. They all are linked with the lateral and medial stria, and actually medial stria most of the time they are linked with dorsal vagal nucleus, habeneural nucleus, reticular formation. And what these structures they do, you can imagine that someone sitting inside you while you are traveling in a bus, and he or she vomits in front of you. What happened? Most of the time you may also have vomiting by the noxious smells of that noxious odors of that vomitus. Most of the time when one vomit inside a crowd, most of the people they have vomiting. So what happened actually, that noxious odors which passes across the olfactive systems to the primary olfactive cortex and the secondary olfactive cortex, and these olfactive cortex they have association with dorsal vagal nucleus. So these odorant noxious stimuli indirectly they stimulate dorsal vagal nucleus and vomiting occurs. So this is the indirect connection with dorsal vagal nucleus. And other thing is that connection with salivatory nucleus, and sometime you go to a party in a hotel and where there is choice of food materials which you like, and your favorite food items are there. So when seeing favorite food items or receiving orders of favorite food items, if you not even if you not see, you have salivation immediately. So favorite orders or favorite orders of a favorite food item will induce salivation immediately, and this has also a pathway. When orders receives cortical structure, they transmit this order to the salivatory nucleus through the habeneural nucleus, and they stimulate the superior and inferior salivary nucleus, and then salivation occurs. So immediately after receiving orders of a favorite food item, increase appetite in you and increase salivation on your tongue. So this is the pathway responsible for that. One another thing we can link with the reticular formation. What reticular formation? You know that most important function of reticular formation is sleep as well. Other functions are also there, but sleep is also. So you can imagine, you must have remembered that some people for have calm sleep or for induction of or initiation of sleep, they used to put inside his or her house some odorant during night time. So some people they used to keep some odorant inside house, and that odorant used to induce sleep in that person, calm sleep. So this is the pathway olfaction they go by this olfactory pathway and stimulate reticular formation, and they induce sleep. And sometime bad uh, like bad odors in your house, you arouse you from the sleep. Sometime something burning inside your house, while you are sleeping and something burning inside, or your house is burning, and that orders coming from burning house will arouse you immediately. And this is the system. The orders from your house which is burning go by olfactive epithelium and olfactive pathway, and they activate the olfactive reticular system, and it will arouse you from sleep. You immediately arouse and see your house is burning. So these are the pathway, this pathway they connected olfactive system, they connected with different nucleus outside the olfactive nerves, and they are responsible for different functions. There are lots of function of the olfactive systems, and the olfactive system is also connected with limbic system, and which you know that limbic system is uh, responsible for emotions. So sometimes some variety of orders are also responsible for emotion, and this emotional features of the orders, they are more pronounced in animal than in human. So this is the pathway, whole pathway the olfactive system. As we know olfactive system, now you know that starting from the our posterior superior part of the nasal mucosa, and then olfactive epithelium, they go to the olfactive bulb, then through the olfactive tract, the lateral lateral stria, intermediate stria. So these are a medial stria, they cross to the opposite side and give some connection to the some cortical structure, and the lateral stria go and end into the primary olfactive cortex. And primary olfactive cortex, they are responsible for identification of the odors, and some connection to the odor structures of the brain's matter. So how will we examine olfactive nerves? So examine olfactive nerve is very important to identify olfactive nerve disorder and the cortical structures. So examine each nostril separately while occluding the other, with the patient's eye closed and one nostril occluded. Bring the test substance near the open one. Ask patient to sniff and indicate whether she smells something or not. If so, to identify it, repeat for the other nostril and compare to the other side, two sides. So at least you have to repeat this test to confirm that patient have anosmia, hyposmia, or other olfactive disorders. So what is clinical significance then? So what is clinical significance? Actually, perception of odor is more important than accurate identification. Perceiving the presence of an odor indicates continuity of olfactive pathway, whereas identification of the odors indicate intact cortical function. As since there is bilateral innervation, a lesion central to decussation of olfactive pathway never cause loss of smell. So lesion of olfactive cortex doesn't produce anosmia. We must know this fact because there is bilateral innervation. So lesion of olfactory cortex doesn't produce anosmia, and appreciation of the presence of a smell even without recognition exclude anosmia. Just exclude anosmia. So these are the most important point we have to know, and we must know that only appreciation of presence of a smell even without recognition exclude anosmia. And this is most important things we have to know. So we examined of olfactive nerve, and we know clinical significance, and there are lots of causes of loss of smell we have to know, like smoking, chronic rhinitis, post-viral polyps, chemical burns. So cadmium toxicity, antihistaminic drugs, or neuroolfactive tumors, so cocaine, unlike things that there are lots of things like they destroy the olfactive mucosa, and they cause atrophy of optic mucosa, and vitamin deficiency as well, like chemotherapeutic agent, cadmium toxicity, antibiotic, antihistaminic, and vitamin deficiency, actually vitamin B6, vitamin B12, and vitamin A, and mineral deficiency like zinc and copper. They cause atrophy of the neuroepithelium of the mucosa, and hence they produce defective olfaction, that is loss of a smell. And loss of smell is also present in Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, temporal lobectomy, and use of propylthiouracil like drugs. Also, frontal lobe tumor, suprasellar tumor, olfactive groove meningioma, they also produce loss of smells, and intranasal tumor, they cause obstructive type of the loss of a smell. So like hearing loss, olfactive loss has also two types, that is conductive and sensory type. These are some literature they have classified like that. So we have to know what is the underlying cause of the loss of smells. Either this is vitamin deficiency, or this is mineral deficiency, or some use of drugs, or some forms of chemical agents, or the smoking, or chemical burns, or some type of infection, or some type of a tumor of the peripheral system or the central system of the olfaction, you must know. So there are lots of causes which cause transient loss of olfaction, and some causes they cause permanent loss of olfaction. So causes of persistent loss of smell, they are craniocerebral tumor, surgical temporal lobectomy, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, meningitis, uh, rhinocephaly, or olfactive dysgenesis in case of Kalman syndrome, that is also called as hereditary hypogonadism with anosmia, or drugs like propylthiouracil, or some familial condition we must know, or some other condition like radiation therapy, chronic sinus disease, use of amphetamine, levodopa, cocaine, or some psychiatric condition like depression, conversion disorder, schizophrenia, Refsum disease. These all are responsible for causing permanent or persistent loss of smell. So these are the causes which we must consider, while you are evaluating olfactive system. Either cause is located in the cortex, or in located in the over the orbitofrontal cortex in olfactive tract, or located inside the nose, that is peripheral part of the olfaction. There are lots of terminology here you have to know, and you must know. They are anosmia, hyposmia, hyperosmia, dysosmia, or parasmia, phantosmia. These are lots of terminology. So what is anosmia? This is very simple, that is no sense of a smell. Hyposmia, a decreased sense of a smell. Hyperosmia, a overtly acute sense of a smell, that is increased sense of a smell. Dysosmia, impairment or defect in the sense of a smell. Parosmia, that is perversion or distortion of a smell. Phantosmia, that is actually perception of an odor that is not real. Phantosmia is also known as, you can remember it from the phantom limb. So phantosmia, perception of an odor that is not real, so that is called phantosmia. Then presbyosmia, this definition we can remember from presbyopia. So presbyosmia is actually decrease in sense of a smell due to aging. As you know that olfactory epithelium is degenerating quickly over month and regenerating. The process is that olfactive epithelium is degenerating and regenerating, but this regenerating power gradually diminishes over the as age of the person passes. In older person regeneration strength is low, so that result in presbyosmia, that is decrease in sense of smell due to aging. Cacoosmia is actually inappropriate or disagreeable odors. And the coprosmia usually is a type of cacoosmia. So cacoosmia with a fecal scent, that is called as coprosmia. And then olfactive agnosia, inability to identify something. So inability to identify, interpret, or detect odors is called olfactive agnosia. There are some condition which we must know, like sphenoidal ridge meningioma, that consists of unilateral optic atrophy or papilledema, exophthalmos and ipsilateral anosmia. And we must consider in this case that sphenoidal ridge meningioma, that is related to the olfactive bulb, olfactive tract and stria. So we must consider in case of loss of smell this condition. Then second is Foster Kennedy syndrome, classically due to a large tumor involving the orbitofrontal region. As we know that our olfactive bulb and olfactive tract, this is located over the medial orbital cortex in the olfactive sulcus. So anything happening there, some large tumor involving that olfactive groove, and or some meningioma of the olfactive groove, they cause direct compression of the olfactive nerve and produce anosmia with unilateral ipsilateral optic atrophy or contralateral papilledema due to increased ICP. Another condition that is called pseudo Foster Kennedy syndrome. This is more associated with ophthalmological pictures. And another condition is Kallmann syndrome, a hereditary disorder usually X-linked, associated with hypogonadism, and this is also a cause of primary infertility, and this is associated with anosmia due to hypoplasia or aplasia of olfactive bulb and olfactive tract. This is a genetic disorder and usually X-linked disorder. We have to know this is also disorder. This is hypogonadism, infertility and anosmia. And this is responsible for anosmia with primary infertility. And the last, not the least, is uncinate fits, and this is complex partial or temporal lobe seizure preceded by an olfactory or gustatory aura, usually disagreeable and often accompanied as the patient loses awareness. And this is the most important part which we have to know. In case of uncinate fits, there is usually olfactive or gustatory aura. This is also called as temporal lobe epilepsy, we must know. So to this point we have known olfactive nerves, olfactive pathway, then olfactive cortex, primary olfactive cortex, secondary olfactive cortex, tertiary, and then other structure, that dorsal vagal nucleus, the habeneural nucleus to the salivatory nucleus, and the reticular formation, the connection of the olfactive system to these structures, and the coding of the action potential. Here we have known that regeneration of the generation of the action potential with the binding of odorant substance to the mucosa, and then the olfactory pathway, and then we have known the examination of the olfactory nerves, then the clinical significance, and then the cause of persistent loss of a smell, then terms and definition, and then a special condition. So this is all about the olfactive nerve today. And I am very positive, optimistic that you must have known something from this video. And this is only olfactive system, and later on I will be discussing about other olfactive, other nerves, cranial nerves. And this is all for today. Thank you, bye, and good morning.